our class, we've been going through the book of Acts, and we actually did that a long time ago, about 7 years ago. And with most of those students from that time, matter of fact, all those students from that time getting older and maturing to full-fledged adulthood, now we decided to go through that again. So we've been recently going through the book of Acts at breakneck speed, and we're officially halfway through now. So covering the book of Acts and just looking at some things there and getting some practical things for today's day and age, even as we look at the very early history of the church. And that's what we'd like to do here today. Just go sort of continue where we left off last week. And last week in our class, we just ended chapter 14. And this is sort of the end of the road as far as the first missionary journey for Paul and Barnabas. They've gone through some cities, beginning in Antioch, and I'm not going to cover everything that they went through there, but you know the stories, and they've ended up here in Lystra and Derbe, which is, again, sort of the end of the road, and then they backtrack and come back down through the same cities and then head back over to Antioch to tell everyone what's happened there. And we'll read a few verses right at the end of chapter 14 just to start out today. And in chapter 14, verse 26, and thence sailed to Antioch, and from whence they had been recommended to the grace of God for the work which they fulfilled. And when they were come and had gathered the church together, they rehearsed all that God had done with them and how he had opened the door of faith unto the Gentiles. And there they abode long time with the disciples. So they had quite a bit to tell. The good news about the Lord dealing with the Gentiles in a different way was big news. And there was just a lot that happened on this trip as well. And we see at the last leg of that journey again, when they ended up in Lystra and Derbe, a lot happens there. You have Paul and Barnabas going. They have the lame man that's healed. You have the mistaken identity, thinking Paul is Mercury and Barnabas is Jupiter. And then you have the quick turnaround there where they go from being worshiped to Paul being rocked to sleep outside the city walls there, and then rising up again and going back into the same city and staying the night, and then going on to Derbe, and again, then backtracking through that all and heading back to Antioch. So a lot going on in this shorter journey, but a lot going on in that first missionary journey. So as we move on to chapter 15, and we'll read a few verses there in a moment, just a few takeaways from chapter 14, the very end. Again, not a full review, but just a few takeaways with some practical things that I think all of us, young and old, can apply to our lives. Number one, the Gentiles went from worshiping Paul to killing him really quick. So it did not take long. Pardon me. And it did not take long, and of course they had the Jews to help them there, get them riled up, for them to go from loving these guys and being ready to make sacrifices to them to, again, killing Paul outside the gates and doing a total 360? No, I guess it'd be a 180 turn from how they had felt about him a few minutes ago. So it did not take long. And when we're in this world today, you know, we're not in the same situation as Paul. We're not being dragged outside the city walls and stoned. But we're in this world today, and it can be lightning quick as far as us being on what we would call just normal terms or good terms as a Christian with our saved family or our unsaved family or our workplace or our circle of friends. We can have a good reputation. We can have a good, if you want to call it, relationship with people. But it can go really fast as far as someone having what we like to think of as at least a respect for what we believe. It can turn really quick to us being just the total bad guy. And it happens. It happens with unsaved people. It can happen even with your Christian family or saved friends that you have, where we're just trying to serve the Lord. We're just trying to do right. We're trying to do right by the Lord and our family and our church and just do what God wants us to do. And all of a sudden, just the circumstances or false information or something being twisted or turned around, all of a sudden we're the bad guy in the situation, like Paul was here. So It happens. So we don't go looking for that. We don't try to get people upset at us or get people mad at us. But eventually it's going to happen. We're not going to have as good of a reputation all of a sudden from everyone that we had before. So again, just be ready for that. And don't be intimidated by it. If you have some opposition from someone that you know, just all we're doing again is just trying to serve the Lord and do what he wants us to do. So Paul, after all this was over here, he just went on and again served the Lord. So, but again, number one, things can turn on you lightning quick when you're out there serving the Lord. And another thing here, sort of more about Paul, but Paul was really a godly, fearless preacher that would just go and do whatever the Lord wanted him to do. And after this point, he's dragged outside of the city walls, he's killed, the Lord raises him up again. He was already godly, he was already fearless, he already did whatever the Lord wanted him to, but now he's a godly, fearless, almost a crazy preacher. And we see after this point, at least the way I see it, after this point, Paul really doesn't have much fear as far as whether he lives or dies from this point. You know, we see before where he avoided some things, and I mean, naturally so, and rightly so, and the Lord spared his life and helped him to escape from some things. And later on we see that, I mean, Paul's standing there and he's getting ready to be scourged. He's not going to take a scourging when he doesn't deserve it, so he speaks up about being a Roman. But Paul, from this point on, is just, even if you can say more fearless than he was, he just doesn't have a fear of dying anymore. He's seen what's on the other side when he was laying there dead outside of Lystra, and he knows he's going to a better place if they do something to him, and so he's just pretty fearless. And again, in our Christian life, I mean, I don't have any desire to die. I've got too much I want to do here. But there comes a point as far as our family or our coworkers or our friends or whoever it is, we get to the point, or we will get to the point eventually, where, you know what, I just don't care much anymore about what they think. Now, again, there's a balance there. We're not going around just being however we want to be because we have the liberty to do that, or, you know, being a jerk for Jesus, as they say, and that sort of thing. But as far as just how we live our life, or how we raise our family, or what we like to do, or the type of church we want to be in, you know, we get to the point where I don't really have that much concern if the rest of my physical family doesn't understand the kind of Christian life I want to lead, or if my coworkers just have no comprehension of the life I'm trying to live with my family or for the Lord. It just really doesn't matter anymore. So Paul sort of lost that fear, and there's a bit of losing a fear of what this world, or even the Christian world, thinks of us as we're just trying to go on and serve the Lord. So number two. Number three, Paul and Barnabas in 14:26 that we read there, they had been recommended to the grace of God for the work which they fulfilled. So Paul and Barnabas finished the course that the Lord had for them to do here. Now, Paul had to die while he was doing it, but they finished the course, and now they're back, and they're able to tell everyone how the Lord accomplished it, what exactly the Lord accomplished, how he was able to use them in spite of their faults, and that's a great thing. They finished the course. And that's such an important thing for us. We need to finish our course. And I'm not talking about, finishing the course of our life. Paul talks about running the race to the end, and we think about serving the Lord till we die, which obviously is what we want to do. But our course, if your course is trying to raise your family for the Lord, your kids, or you don't have kids yet, it's just you and your spouse, and you're just trying to live for the Lord. You're just trying to do what's right for God. Or you have a certain ministry that the Lord's given you, and this is what I feel God has for me at this time. It might be something different later. The Lord might move me to something else, even within the church or outside the church, whatever. You're not necessarily in one ministry till the day you die. The Lord can do what he wants as far as moving us around, but just finishing the course. If the Lord's given you a specific thing to do, and for a husband or a wife, the Lord's given you your spouse. I mean, that's your course, that's your ministry, that's your job. Or the Lord's given you your children, or the Lord's given you a specific ministry. Just don't quit halfway. Like Brother Grady says all the time, I mean, the Lord's getting ready to come back here. and I hope he's right, that the Lord's actually standing there ready to come down. I mean, 6 months to a year tops is what I feel, but it's been longer than 6 months or a year since I thought that sometimes. So, but the Lord's getting ready to come back. So it's not the time to quit now. But here, Paul and Barnabas finished the course, and you and I just need to finish the course that the Lord gives to us. Just don't stop halfway. And there's a lot of things that I wish I had done differently as a young person, just even outside of being a Christian. I wish I could say that I never quit anything. You know, people can stand up and say, you know what, I never quit a single thing my whole entire life, and I endured to the end. Well, maybe not biblical talk, but, you know, I got it done, and I didn't quit, and I finished that class, or I finished that job. I'm 52 years old, and I've quit a lot of things over my lifetime. I'm just going to be honest there. But I hope that I never quit on the Lord as far as turning from the Lord and what he has done for me and what he wants me to do for him. So yeah, I've quit a lot of physical things in this lifetime, but I don't want to quit on the Lord. So just finish your course there. And then one more takeaway, and then we'll move on to 15. Let's see, down in verse 27, the latter half, they rehearsed all that God had done with them and how he had opened the door of faith unto the Gentiles, and there they abode a long time with the disciples. So their course was done. Paul and Barnabas had finished this course. This one thing God wanted them to do was this missionary journey, and they went, they did what the Lord wanted them to do, and they came back. They finished the course, but yet somehow they still wanted to hang around God's people here. So they're a long time in the last verse here of this chapter with the people of God. And again, that's just something for us to remember as we finish something, legitimately finish something. You know, we didn't stop halfway. You know, our kids are adults now. I mean, I'm not at that stage yet, but some of them are adults. But when your kids are all adults, they matured, they're out on their own, that job is pretty much finished, other than hopefully they come back once in a while and visit and say hi, or maybe come to you for advice or that sort of thing. But that job is done. You've raised your children the best that you could for the Lord, and they're on their own and they're responsible to him. Or you have a ministry that you did for the Lord, and that ministry just wrapped up. You didn't quit or anything, but the Lord just sort of moved you on from that, or it just stopped. You know, that happens, where a ministry is just changed and your part in that is done, it's completed. So you can have things that are finished, things that are done, but it's still a good thing to be around the people of God. Yeah, your kids are grown up and gone away, but it's still not a bad idea for you to come to the Sunday school time or to be in church regularly as much as you were when your kids were little. You know, as you're able to. I mean, we all know that things come up and there's problems and issues, but the intent is to still be around the people of God. And that's exactly what Paul and Barnabas were doing here. They were a long time with the disciples. And later on, we see here, of course, that here they are with the disciples. They're just testifying what the Lord did. They're fellowshipping with them, having a good time. And the Lord uses them again, and he sends them on another missionary journey. And, of course, in our life, the Lord is going to want to have us do something else for him. But we don't just do one thing and then we're just sort of here for 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 years until, you know, the Lord takes us home, or he comes back, takes us home in death, or comes back for us in the clouds. So there's something else for us to do for him. So it's still a good thing to still want to be around God's people, even when our work is done. And in our church, I really feel like we have a good mix of people. As far as young, old, different stages of life, we don't have a church where everyone is in the eyes of the world, where it's all the young, hip crowd, you know, with their type of music and their type of activities. And we don't have a church where it's all the old-timers who are just reminiscing about the good old days and just sitting around waiting for the Lord to take them home and get them out of here. We've got a good mix of young and old people that are just here to serve the Lord and be around each other and get good fellowship and hear good preaching. So I appreciate that. I'm glad to be part of that kind of a church. So after that short introduction, on to chapter 15. Let's read verses 1 through 3, and then I'll try to move through these things quickly. So Acts chapter 15, verses 1 through 3. And certain men which came down from Judea taught the brethren and said, Except ye be circumcised after the manner of Moses, ye cannot be saved. When therefore Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and disputation with them, they determined that Paul and Barnabas and certain other of them should go up to Jerusalem unto the apostles and elders about this question. And being brought on their way by the church, they passed through Phoenice and Samaria, declaring the conversion of the Gentiles, and they caused great joy unto all the brethren. And the last verse we read there goes right along with verse 27 and 14, where they're just rehearsing what God has done for them, and now as they're going along to try to take care of this new problem that's popped up with believers causing some issues, as they're traveling along to go take care of this problem, they're just telling other Jews, other Christians about it, and people are happy. Normal people, normal Christians are going to be happy about this news. God is dealing with the Gentiles directly now. They don't have to come through the Jew and through the law that we have to get to God anymore. That's a good thing, because we don't even have to go through the law anymore. And they can come directly through Jesus Christ just like us. I mean, that's good news. To a normal Christian, that would be good news back then. So there are some abnormal Christians here that Paul and Barnabas have to deal with. But anyway, so verse 3 goes right along with that, just testifying to what the Lord has done for them. And again, this leads to the problem here in verse number 1, and certain men which came down from Judea. So anytime in our life, in Paul's life, in our life as well, anytime you have any kind of a victory, and it doesn't have to be a big, gigantic victory. I mean, we think of a victory as, the Lord just providing something unbelievable that we never thought he would do, and here it happens, or the Lord answers some giant prayer that we've been praying about for years, for decades. I mean, those are big victories. But any good thing, big or small, that we have happening in our life, in this wacky, crazy world that we live in, any good thing that we see the Lord do for us, that's a victory. That's something the Lord did for us that he didn't have to do, that we've thought about or prayed about. Now the Lord answered this prayer or worked out this detail in our life or in our kids' life or in the church, whatever it is. Any good things that happen in this crazy, wacky world right now is a victory. It's a grace that the Lord gives to us that he doesn't have to, but he does. But anytime you have any kind of victory, big or small, there's going to be some kind of opposition to it. So again, we're not looking for opposition. We're not looking to fight. We're not looking for a battle, but just be ready, because it's probably going to happen. You're going to have some kind of opposition in your Christian life. It's just the way it is here. So be ready for it. And again, in verse 1, certain men come down from Judea. So when Paul and Barnabas are traveling, their main problem was always with who? I mean, here they're going to some people that they know, to the Jews, but now they're striking out and going to these Gentile cities. But no matter how far they went away from Jerusalem, the biggest problem that they always had when they're trying to go out and tell people about Jesus Christ is Jews that were following them from place to place, no matter how far away, just coming to make problems. So that happened time after time. And now that they're working their way back after this missionary journey, and the Lord has opened the eyes of the Gentiles, and this early church is sort of forming here, and everything's brand new. It's sort of the Wild West of the church age, if you want to call it that. Everything's changing constantly. But here, now that this has happened, Paul and Barnabas' biggest problem isn't necessarily from the unsaved Jews anymore, which there's still definitely a problem, but now they have almost just as big of a problem from the saved Jews that are traveling long distances, no matter how far they have to come, just to cause problems for Paul and Barnabas and the early church there. So just constant problems, and now, again, from believers, from people that have believed. If you look down at we'll get to it eventually here, but verse number 5 in chapter 15, there arose up certain of the sect of the Pharisees which believed. saying that it was needful to circumcise them and to command them to keep the law of Moses. So these are believing people. Again, they're not quite normal, though. These are some abnormal Christians trying to mix the two things, and it's not going to fly, but they're not letting it go. And they're going to do everything that they can to make problems for Paul and his company there. So, again, certain men come down. They have opposition from these saved people. And again, just be ready for it when it happens. You know, we all think of ourselves, or at least I think of myself, and I think it's human nature. We all think it to a point. I'll just say, I am one of the nicest guys that I know. And you would probably say, I am one of the nicest guys, or I am one of the nicest gals that I know. It's just who I am, and I get along with people, and I try to be and of course, all that goes along with being a good Christian too, but I'm genuinely just a nice guy. But honestly, I'm looking at a room full of what I would call nice men and women. And so it's hard to believe, why would anyone want to give me a problem with anything like that? Or why would anyone want to give anyone here a problem? They're just trying to serve the Lord and do right. Why would anyone want to rise up, especially a Christian, and just cause problems just because they can? Again, it's just human nature. The devil's going to twist things. You know, we're humans. We have emotions, and we have problems, and we have selfishness, and we have, bad judgment and all that sort of thing. And unfortunately, it just doesn't go away magically when we get saved. I mean, to a point, maybe we have the Spirit leading us, so hopefully the Spirit overrides some of that, but it's still there. So there's going to be problems even from believers, from professing believers. But again, with that, sometimes, sometimes we hear the attitude or the saying that, you know what, most of your problems are going to come from just Christians. Well, I mean, don't let the devil twist the statistics, because if you really feel like all your problems are just coming from fellow Christians, you're going to get to the point to where you don't even want to be around fellow Christians, and you're just going to separate, and you're going to have church in your home, or you're not going to go to church anywhere, or, you can't operate like that either. Don't let the devil twist things around and make you think that all your problems are with fellow Christians. If it seems that way, as a good Christian, who are you going to be around the most? I mean, hopefully you're going to spend some time around fellow Christians. So we're not hanging around our work buddies or our extended family, that's unsaved and no interest in God. You just happen to be around church people a lot of your week. So yeah, there's going to be some problems that pop up occasionally because you're around them all the time, right? That's like other families. Hey, I get along great with other people. It's just my own family I can't stand. Well, it's because you're around them all the time, and they have to be around you all the time. So yeah, when you spend more time together, there's more opportunity for a little clash now and then. And it's the same thing here. I mean, we're all humans. We all have our own issues, and yeah, there's going to be some little things that pop up. But again, don't let the devil twist the statistics and say, yeah, you know what, all your problems are really with Christians. Why do you even spend time with them anymore? You'd be better off on your own, just you and God, Don't let the devil put that thought in your head. That's him trying to twist things around. But back to our chapter here, we have these certain men coming down. Let's see, again, the problem is some very abnormal Christians that are trying to put a new patch on an old garment and trying to keep the old law, even as things are obviously changing with Jesus Christ and everyone being able to go directly to him. So these people they've got to let go, and it's not happening right now. So what do they do in verse number 2 of chapter 15? They've got this issue, and it is an issue. Something needs to be done about it. Verse 2, therefore Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and disputation with them. So anytime that you have something going on in your life and the Lord has given you a victory, or the Lord has showed you what you're supposed to do, or he's given you some guidance, and all of a sudden you're getting opposition from that, or just from other people, whether it's saved or unsaved or whatever, or wherever it's coming from, When you have opposition and you know that you're doing the right thing and you're just trying to do what the Lord wants you to do, the only thing that you can do is oppose that opposition. You got to push back. But you and the Lord, you got to push back and not let them intimidate you or push you down. These guys that were coming down here, these certain men, they would have been the happiest guys in Israel if Paul and Barnabas would have just folded up and said, you know what, maybe we are moving sort of fast here. I mean, Jesus only just died a short while ago, and we're talking about thousands of years of the law. Maybe we should take baby steps. That would have been awesome for them. That would have made their year. They would have made Paul Man of the Year if he had done that. He would have been on Time magazine. But Paul wasn't going to do that. He pushes back here. They have no small dissension and disputation with them. So, in other words, it's a very big, like honeycombs. Honeycombs big, yeah, it's not small. I mean, this is a big problem. It's a big disputation that they're doing, that they're pushing back on them. So, we know this verse doesn't apply to us as far as doctrinally, about turning the other cheek. That's a verse for the Jews. But we like to show grace as a Christian when we can, and we'll turn the cheek, or we'll sort of wink at something like God did to the Gentiles back in the Old Testament, and we'll let some things pass on by and not make an issue of it at that time, with our unsaved friends or our saved family or our unsaved family. Sometimes we'll pick our battles as far as what we take a hard stand on, as far as how we're trying to live our life or lead our family for the Lord, or the things that we'll do, or the places we'll go. So there is some grace there. There is a measure of, if you want to call it, turning the other cheek. But there does come a time as a Christian when we do have to take a stand. You know what? We've been coming down here for a long time, to the family, and we enjoy seeing you at the holidays, and this is really great, and it means a lot to us and our kids. But if this is the way it's going to be, with the parties and things getting sort of out of hand, I don't know if we're going to do this anymore. We might just stay home for Christmas. That's a hypothetical conversation. But you might have to take a stand sort of like that. Now, again, there's balance to that, right? Just like everything else in the Bible. Now, if you're the kind of guy who goes to your parents' house, and I like Christmas trees. I do not mind a Christmas tree at all. But if you're the kind of person who doesn't like Christmas trees, and you go to your parents' house and you drag that bale bush out of their living room and you throw that off the front porch because that is not what God desires for a Christian, that kind of stand is probably overdoing it a little bit, because it's not your house. But again, if you go down, even if you're a guest at a close friend or a close relative's house, and the Christmas party turns into, the Christmas booze coming out at every holiday now, well, I'm not saying to take the bottles and break them in the front yard. That could be a possibility in a certain situation. I'm not ruling that out. But again, you have to take some sort of stand against that, I think. I feel like I would. If Christmas or Thanksgiving turned into, just any other party like the world has in your Christian family, and now it's just incorporating those sort of things from the world, to me, that would be a place where I would personally have to say, you know what, I don't think this is for us anymore. And again, under certain circumstances, I might take a couple bottles and break them in the front yard or pour them down the toilet where they belong. But again, that would vary. That would depend on the circumstances. But there is going to be a time where you don't turn the other cheek or you don't wink at something. You're going to have to stand up and take a stand for the Lord and your family and your testimony and do something about it and push against what's going on there. So you're going to have opposition that's just being pushed on you from all areas in your life, and you just got to push back, and that's what Paul is doing here. So they are going down. So again, though, balance like everything else. Verse number 3 in chapter 15, we read through that, and we sort of talked about that already. Again, normal Christians would think this is fantastic, that the Jews are getting saved, and they don't have to come through the Gentiles are getting saved. They don't have to come through the Jews or through the law that the Jews had in their hand. They go directly through Jesus Christ. And then down in verse number 4, they were come to Jerusalem. They were received of the church and of the apostles and elders, and they declared all things that God had done with them. Again, just speaking up about the Lord's work here, telling what's going on. In verse number 5, we read the first part of this, but there rose up certain of the sect of the Pharisees, which believed, saying that it was needful to circumcise them and to command them to keep the law of Moses. Again, friendly fire. These guys, obviously they're lacking some understanding here, but these are supposed to be the good guys. These are believers that are coming and causing these issues for Paul and Barnabas. And again, how could friendly fire happen to such a nice guy? Well, that's just human nature. It's going to happen sometime eventually. It's going to happen. So again, just be ready to deal with it is all. Just be ready to deal with it. And by deal with it, we mean if you are opposed or if your family starts talking about your legalistic lifestyle, and again, these are hypothetical situations. I mean, I'm not going through this right now or anything. But if your family ever comes to the point of talking about your legalistic lifestyle or, your holy standards or whatever it is, hey, who cares? That goes back to Paul came to a point where he just didn't really care that much anymore, to be honest. And again, sometimes we might just have to get to that point ourselves. So down to verse 6, though, as we're winding up here, and the apostles and elders came together for to consider of this matter. So they're getting together. They're going to consider what's going on here, what the Lord showed to Paul and Barnabas and everyone else that was with them, and the Gentiles, and got the opposition here. So they're going to settle this once and for all at this meeting that they're going to have. So this is really, in church history, in early church history, what's going on here after this first missionary journey, pardon me, it's really a history-making time. Really changes things up. Like in my Bible, I got this Ruckman Reference Bible, and in the bottom one of his notes is that this is just such a bizarre history-making time period, because here we're going to have settled what does a person have to do to get saved, and now the case is that all you have to do is trust Jesus Christ, and what does a person have to do to stay saved? And again, it's just through Jesus Christ. It's not the law. It's not the law to get saved. It's not the law to stay saved. It's not the law to have the right kind of Christian life. Everything is just through Jesus Christ. So this really is, we read through this story, and we've heard it ever since we were this tall in Sunday school class, but it really is a bizarre, history-changing time in history, in what the Lord is doing here on earth after the death of Jesus Christ. So Paul and Barnabas are really making history by going and considering this matter and clearing this matter up. And the last thing I'll say here, and then we'll be dismissed, just as far as a practical takeaway here with what's going on in this group, we don't realize sometimes, especially a first-generation Christian, like my mom was saved right before I was born, so I'm a second-generation Christian, but we don't realize, I don't think, how we, with the Lord's help, with Him coming down and convicting us and saving us, we don't realize how that's a history-changing event. You don't know, especially as a first-generation Christian, what would your family history, your own personal history, or your kids, or your circle of friends, or your extended family, if you had never trusted the Lord as your Savior, how would that have affected your kids, or your marriage, or your extended family that got saved after that, or your friends that got saved? You're George Bailey. What if you had never been born again? What would the world be like? And that's really a good question. It might not hurt you once in a while to maybe think of that. If the Lord hadn't saved me, what would my life be right now? Or what would my marriage be like right now? Or what condition would my kids be in right now if the Lord had never had mercy on me and I didn't have the opportunity to be born again. So there's a lot of people whose lives would be a lot different if they hadn't trusted the Lord, and if you personally hadn't trusted the Lord. So now that we are saved, that part of our history is settled, it's cemented, we're born again, we're having, God willing, we're having a good influence on our family or our acquaintances, whoever it is. So what do we do now? We're here, we're saved, we're trying to do our best to serve the Lord, and we've been that way for a long time. We've been saved for years or even decades. What do we do from this point on? Well, with the Lord's help, you can still change history. You can still do things that are a big deal, just like Paul and Barnabas are doing here. So even if your kids are up and gone, or even if, different phases of your life have completed and you're in a different phase now, there's no end to what the Lord can do for you and with you and through you to help other people here and just do the Lord's work while you're here. So again, just continuing to do what the Lord wants you to do can be a history-changing event. So with your family or with your church or with your friends, the Lord can still use you to just fight against the devil, fight against the flesh that we experience here in this life, and the Lord can do a lot with, I always like to say, young or old. And I say this, I have said it in the past quite a few times. We're about out of time now. Like at Village Manor, like at an assisted living or an old folks retirement place, that sort of place. Yeah, nobody's going to get out and go banging on doors or street preaching or do that sort of thing from there. I mean, very few. But the Lord has something anybody can do. If you're just trying to serve the Lord and reading your Bible and praying, the Lord's going to illustrate something that you can do, young or old. So that's our job now. We may have done some things in the past as far as serving the Lord. The Lord might have drawn some of those things to a conclusion. But He's used us in the past. And Paul and Barnabas are here. He definitely used them with this trip. But here they are just serving the Lord and being with other believers and testifying, and the Lord's getting ready to use them all over again. So what have you done for the Lord? You can think about that, and you can be grateful that the Lord's allowed you to accomplish some things in your church or with your family and for Him. But what does the Lord still have for you to do? So go on. Let's all of us go on and just keep serving the Lord here. All right, well, let's have a word of prayer, and then we'll be dismissed and have our 11 o'clock service. Lord, we thank you for being able to be here this morning, and just thank you for this Sunday school time. Just pray that something I said could just be an encouragement or just make us think about what we have done for you in the past and what you still have for us to do. And just thank you for allowing us to be saved, allowing us to serve you here while we're on this earth. And I just pray as we serve you, even in our church today, just be with the singing and the preaching and everything that goes on here. Just pray that it would be done for your honor and glory. And just lead our pastor, lead us as we're serving you here, Lord. Just help us to do our best to put you first and to see what you would have for us to do next. So we look forward to just doing what you want us to do and being blessed for that. So again, just bless this remainder of the service here today.